Hey everyone, and welcome to another show of Artist and the Author. I'm your host, David Plant. Before we jump in, I just want to give a big shout out and a big thanks to everybody out there who's been watching my show. Your support is fantastic, and it's a big deal for me. I've got all sorts of great ideas for new episodes. I'm working on new books, I'm working on new music, so I'm going to be getting all sorts of cool stuff out there for you. And for everyone who has responded to my interview request for published illustrators and published authors and also self-publishing experts, hang in there because I'm going to get in touch with you. There's just lots of folks and I want to talk with each and every one of you. So in the meantime, if you haven't already, hop on over to my YouTube station, hit subscribe, smack that little dingy bell. That way you know when I upload new episodes of Artist and the Author, new cool music, and other cool videos. All right, so let's head on over to our show. Today I've got a fantastic show for you. Our illustrator of today is wonderful. He is one of my favorites. I guarantee you're going to love his work. And then on Name That Book, if you are a sci-fi lover, this is a must-have and a must-read. Trust me on this one. And then on self-publishing tips, I'm going to do a recap of everything we talked about so far and put it into a nice little package so that we can see the flow between the idea in our head onto our paper and the tools we have used to get from point A to point B. And then afterwards, into our further episodes, we're going to start looking at actually formatting our pages and actually getting our story ready to be uploaded and self-published. So like I said, I've got a good show for you today. So without further ado, let's get started. All right, so let's get started on great illustrators. So today's illustrator, I found out about him probably when I was about 9 years old. So I used to collect all sorts of comic books and books on illustrators, and his book was probably one of my favorites. So his name is Brian Froud, born in 1947 in England, and he was a fantasy illustrator and a conceptual artist. So he started out doing illustrations for children's books. So one of the first books he did was with an author, Margaret May, and he did actually a couple of her books between 1972 and 1976. So this one is called The Wind Between the Stars. Now I haven't read this book, I'm not real familiar with it, but it looks like a pretty cool book, and I might just try to get a hold of a copy if I can. But if you look at Brian's artwork, it is phenomenal work. It is so detailed, there's so much going on, and the composition flows, perfectly. But if you look at the detail in it, you've got like a little fish here, you got a little mouse, you got a lady's face, a young lady standing, just so much going on in this illustration. And this is true for pretty much most of his work. He puts so much detail in it. You can look at this for hours and find new cool little details in his work. So another one he did illustrations for was Mary Horton. And this is Are All the Giants Dead? So this is another children's book. And this one came out in 1975. This is the cover. And you can see his style is just, again, the detailing on it, even with the flourishing around everything is just so detailed and intricate. You can see all sorts of cool little things going on the more you look at it. And then one of the illustrations inside, see now I've said it before, I absolutely love pen and ink. And this is a gorgeous pen and ink. The detail in it is phenomenal, and the more you look at it, the more you see. You look up here in the top, you see a little owl winking at you. You see this little gnome or little elf kind of peeking around the owl mischievously. And then you see a cat on the old lady behind her head, and then you got a little mouse that's sneaking out of her jacket. But there's all sorts of cool things. You got a quill pen and ink. You've got a carving on the side of the chair. But this is the type of work you can just kind of look at, and the more you look, the more you see. So after this, or right around the same time, he published his first book of his work, which was called The Land of Froud. And this has a collection of a lot of his different art pieces. And again, the detail in it is just beautiful. The objects in there, just the whole subject matter, just so unique. You see the little boy, he's got a little pout look on his face. It looks like he's running away from home. And you've got this like org, talking to the little boy and showing him the way to somewhere. And the org's got an earring stuck through his lip. Just really neat stuff. But the book that really kind of brought him into the public view was this one, Fairies. So this is actually the book that I've got. And my parents bought this for me way back in the day. This one right here. And like I said, it was one of my favorite books. I would sit here and look at this book for hours on end because the pictures in it were so detailed and just had so much character. And you can see the detail and the coloring is just, everything is put together so nicely. But the pages are filled. If you can get yourself a copy of this book, which you should be able to pretty easy. I think they are reprinted, and you can buy new ones, you can buy used ones. It's a great book to have. So when he published his book, he actually ended up getting the attention of a certain producer. His name, and some of y'all might know him, is Jim Henson. So Jim contacted Brian because he was getting ready to start this new production. For those who don't know who Jim Henson is, he was the creator of the Muppets. So the movie that he wanted to produce was The Dark Crystal. So he got with Brian, and Brian helped develop all the conceptual artwork. And if you've never seen The Dark Crystal, you have got to check it out. It is one of the most unique films I've ever watched. It is beautiful. The scenery is gorgeous. And the thing is, everybody in it are Muppets. So everything is puppeteer work. But the detail and everything is fantastic. I highly recommend you go check it out. So when this came out, in I think it was 1982, Brian also published another book of artwork, of the conceptual artwork for The Dark Crystal. So he had released a book at the same time this movie was being released. So after this released, Jim developed another production, and he got back with Brian, and they worked on the Labyrinth. So Brian did a lot of the conceptual arts for all the characters in the Labyrinth. So if you've never watched the Labyrinth, again, this is another very unique movie. So it's got puppeteers, but it also incorporates some people in it as well. And the main character is no other than David Bowie. So David Bowie didn't do a whole lot of acting, but he did a really good job in this movie. So this is a great movie. If you haven't seen it, to go check it out, or maybe you want to go watch it again. But I highly recommend checking out this movie. And again, when this came out in 1986, Brian also produced a book with a lot of the conceptual artwork for this movie. And that was called The Goblins of Labyrinth. So in addition to these productions, he did a lot of other ones as well. So in 1987, he did another Jim Henson called The Storyteller, and I believe this is a series. There's several different shows on this one. Then in 1989, he did Little Nemo Adventures in Slumberland. And I believe this one he worked with, I don't know if it was a Japanese production company or it was an Asian production company as far as I know. Then he worked on a little animation, The Life and Adventures of Santa Claus. That was in 2000. And then in 2003, he worked on the P.J. Hagen's Peter Pan. So this is the live action version of Peter Pan. And then he actually also worked with Disney on Peach Dragon. Did a lot of conceptual artwork for Peach Dragon. And I imagine a lot of folks out there have seen this movie. But another thing he did in 2019 is he put together a follow-up with the Dark Crystal. And he called it the Dark Crystal Age of Resistance. And he worked with Netflix on this one. He did one season, and it was a series. So I'm going to show you a quick little clip of the trailer. I think you might be interested in watching this. It's very cool. So go check it out.
Froud is at risk. The darkening corrupts everything it touches.
What is the darkening?
Behold.
I see many endings lay before us. Some good, most bad. What have the Skeksis done? Tell no one.
All right, so what'd you think of that? That was a pretty cool series. I think it's only one season, but it's definitely worth watching. So another project he worked on was the Cottingley series, which was a parody on the Cottingley Fairies. So if you're not familiar with the Cottingley Fairies, so that was a 20th century hoax created by two young cousins. One was, I believe, 9 and the other was 16. They lived in Cottingley, England. So what they did is their father was a photographer. So they learned how to take photos, and they borrowed their father's camera, and they took these photos of them in the nature with these little fairy figures as though they were talking to him. So at the time, there was a Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. He was commissioned to write an article of fairies in the 1920 edition of the Stand magazine. So Doyle heard about this, and he thought it was real. So he swore up and down this was proof that there were fairies. So some of the people at the time believed it, others thought it was a hoax, but obviously it came out later that it was a hoax. So this book that Brian made is kind of a parody on it. So basically this is a book, and as you go through the pages, you'll see these pictures of what look like pressed fairies, like you would press flowers, but these are fairies in them. And it's a really neat book, and I think you can get yourself a hold of one of these fairly easy. But this was published back in 1994. It was all the craze. It really was very popular. So this is some of Brian Froud's work, and he has got a tremendous amount of it. You know, if you like what you've seen so far, go check him out. You're going to love all his other work. And definitely those movies, the Dark Crystal and the Labyrinth, and also the series of the Dark Crystal, you got to check them out. So we're going to head on over to our next section, Name That Book. I've got a really good one for you. Trust me on this one. So I'll see you over there. All right, you guys ready for Name That Book? This is a good one. So you're going to have 5 minutes of a reading. I'm going to pop in a few clues for you to help you out. And then at the end, there's going to be a 10-second countdown so you know it's coming to an end. And then afterwards, I'm going to tell you what the book is. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the book, and you're going to decide whether you want to read it or not. All right, so here we go. Name that book, and good luck.
Year 894, John Glenn's ship time. Erica was cold and Gabrielle was warm. She wouldn't have been interested in this stuff anyway. Erica was one pilot of the carrier John Glenn. John Glenn was currently at rest, safely orbiting wide around the gas giant planet Harlequin, and not in need of a pilot. Gabrielle headed the terraforming team, charted to create a habitable moon from the jumble of raw material that made up Harlequin's moon system. 4 of the team were warm now, far too many in the long term. But during these few decades, they would accomplish most of what needed doing. Then they would wait for the moon system to settle down again. The larger pusher tugs, all 3 of them, were thrusting hard against Moon 10. Their fusion engines sprayed a trident of light across the sky. The lesser Moon 26 was already in place, orbiting Moon 1 since last year. That orbit wasn't stable. It shrank steadily within the cloud of impact debris around Moon 1, but that didn't matter. Moon 26 would be gone in a few days.
John Glenn calling LPT-1. Wayne, how are you doing?
Nearly finished here, I think. Astronaut concurs. Check our orbit.
I did that. Start shutting down the motors.
In 4 hours, Moon 10 was falling free. When this phase was over, Harlequin's moons would have to be recounted. There would be fewer of them. Gabrielle considered a meal and sleep. The moons wouldn't collide for 15 days yet, but he ordered a squeeze of stew and stayed at his post. One loose moon wouldn't matter. There was no living thing to be harmed in Harlequin's moon system, and minor accidents could be fixed. It was the LPTs he would worry about. Lose his spacecraft, and he'd lose the game. The peppery smell of warming vegetables and broth made his stomach rumble. So, where to park the pusher tugs? He smiled. They'd be passing very near Moon 41.
Wayne, bust your LPTs loose and get them into orbit. Here are the specs. I'm working out your next mission.
When do we get some rest, boss?
I'll find you that too.
Gabrielle ate slowly, savoring the celery and potatoes. John Glenn's internal garden was thriving. It had been a water tank when they left Sol System, and their diet had palled rapidly. He had a plan. He could start on it tomorrow. Thrust would take a few 100 days. Harlequin would grow a little hotter. Ultimately, Moon 1 would too, and Erica, when she warmed, would love it. Under Gabrielle's guidance, Wayne's team lifted the large pusher tugs from Moon 10 and sent them drifting toward a rare field region within Harlequin's frantically busy moon system. Wouldn't want them anywhere near the collision point. It took him in the astronaut program less than an hour to work up the next sequence. The LPTs had tremendous acceleration when they weren't attached to larger masses. Their light outshone the Sun, Apollo, by a lot. By the end of the day, they were in loose orbit around Moon 41. Gabrielle ate at his post, while Wayne guided the LPTs to the surface, one by one. The hard part came next, as Wayne's team moored them against the bedrock core. The tugs were flattened structures, a tokamak-style fusion thruster ringing one side, a cage of shock absorbers and anchors at the other. Placing anchors were tricky, because when the LPTs were set going, their thrust would start quakes. Set them going on low thrusts, let the blast backfire. They melt their way through volatiles down to bedrock. Then close the insulation ports and wait while the molten rocks solidified over the next century. Gabrielle's team would spend 100 years cold, then warm again to finish the job. But they would finish adding volatiles and masks to Moon 1 before they went cold. One of the last major movements of a complicated symphony was underway as Moon 10 approached Moon 26, which was in motion retrograde above Moon 1. There had been other collisions. Moon 1 was already a dust ball surrounded by a flattened ring that glowed in Apollo's light. It looked like Saturn in Sol System, with the ring system lightly twisted by Harlequin's massive gravity. The oblate spheres drifted together like flaming taffy. Gabrielle watched the two moons eat each other's kinetic energy. Hot rock and volatiles churned in a twisting red-orange fireball and began to drift toward Moon 1. A raw sense of power tugged at the edges of Gabriel's attention as he forced his focus to stay narrow. He had to stay on top of this. Playing God carried awesome responsibilities. His purpose was to create a habitable world, a staging area for the antimatter generator that would...
All right, let's take a look at some self-publishing tips today. So we are going to put together what I've already talked about in previous episodes in basically a nice package so we can see how it all flows together. So we are going to start on why self-publish. So there's a couple reasons why. First thing is you want the creative freedom to do whatever you want to do. So everything from content to cover to overall presentation, it is all your ideas and it's completely up to you. You have higher royalties. So typically the traditional publishers usually offer a 10 to 15% royalty, whereas self-publishing royalties can be upwards of 70%. Then you also have faster time to market. So typical publishers can take years, and that's if you're lucky enough for them to choose your work. With self-publishing, the schedule's really up to you, because as soon as you're done with your book, you can put it to publish. Very quick. And then the other item is global reach. So you've got platforms like Amazon Kindle Direct Publishing. That's the one I use. It's called KDP. You have Smashwords and other forms of publishing. There's quite a bit, and so you get a really big reach out to the public with these different platforms. Then you have ownership rights. All the work is yours. So if you go through a typical publisher, they will typically own a lot of the rights to your book. When you self-publish, it is completely yours. So to me, that's a big deal. Then you have niche markets. So if you are doing a book that's kind of a niche market, self-publishing, you don't have to look for a traditional publisher that's going to fit your niche, which could be very difficult. With self-publishing, you can do it yourself and market it to whatever niche you want to market it to. So now there are a few challenges with self-publishing, and the big one is, you need to market it yourself. That's one thing with a traditional publishing company, is they've got a powerhouse as far as marketing. With self-publishing, there are some outlets out there, but the majority of the work is up to you to get your name out there and get your book out there. So let's talk about some of the self-publishing services. So you have Amazon Kindle Direct Publishing. Like I said earlier, that's the one that I use. And this platform allows you to self-publish with ebooks and printed books. It's all print on demand. You have control over all the book's contents, design, the pricing, and they've got different commission rates depending on whether you do ebooks or whether you do hard copies or printed books. Then you have Reedsy. Reedsy offers a comprehensive suite of services including editing, design, marketing. They also provide a platform to connect with professionals who can help you in every step along the way. So that's a very good option as well. You have BookBaby. So BookBaby provides a range of services from book printing and ebook publishing to audiobook and marketing as well. They offer high royalties and a very transparent pricing model. Then you have Draft the Digital. This service allows to distribute your ebooks to multiple retailers, including Amazon, Apple, Barnes & Noble, and others. So it's a great option to be able to market to all these different platforms from one source. Then you have Lulu. So Lulu offers print on demand for books as well as other products. So the one thing you want to do is you want to take a look at these different options, and there's more out there, but these are some of the main services. So take a look at them and see which one best fits what you're looking to do. Now let's talk about story flow. All right, so how does a story typically go from beginning to end? So first you're going to have the introduction. So the introduction creates your setting, which is where and when the story takes place. It establishes your main characters, the introduction to the protagonist and the antagonist, and other key characters. And then you have the initial conflict. So this is the problem or challenge the main character is going to face through the book. Then you go to your setting. So opening scene, this is like the hooks that really draws in your reader. So then you also have the inciting incident. So that's the event that kind of sets the whole story, kind of starts the story. And then you have your first plot point. And that is a significant event that pushes the protagonist into a conflict. So this kind of starts the journey of the book. Then you've got the confrontation. So you've got a rising action. It's a series of events and challenges that the protagonist faces. Do you have subplots? That's additional storylines that support the main plot, and you can have more than one subplot. You can have multiple subplots. So the more involved and the more grand your book is, the more subplots you might have in there. Then you have your midpoint, which is a crucial turning point in your story that kind of directs the story towards the conclusion. Then you've got a second plot point. That's another major event that helps lead to the climax. And there can be more than just one second plot point. It could be multiple things coming together to bring it to the climax. So then you've got the resolution. So the resolution has the climax in it, which is the most intense part of the story, where the main conflict happens. And then you have the falling action. And this is where events that follow the climax and lead toward a resolution. So this is kind of bringing the book down, to the finale. And then you've got the resolution. And this is the conclusion where the conflicts are resolved and the story comes to an end. And then you have the epilogue. And this is kind of the wrap up to the story. So a brief section that provides closure and can also kind of open it up for future, books in a series if you're doing a series. So let's take a look at story outline. All right, so now we've kind of got in our head some ideas on why we want to self-publish. We've got some concepts on where we can go to self-publish. We understand the flow of a book. So now we can kind of start working this, get the big picture of our story together. So now let's start on the story outline development. So one source that we can use is called prechance.org, and this is an AI outline story generator. So what you can do, it's got two functions on the story generator. So what you will do is you'd go onto the website and you would kind of plug in the concept of your story, and you would have two options. So you can go to chapter/episode summaries, which is going to generate basically an outline of the story. Or you can do the overall plot and characters, which will give you a plot summary, give you some ideas on a cover art. It'll give you the themes of the story, and it will give you some characters and tell you a little bit about the characters. And then at the end, it'll kind of give you a little plot twist. So this is just one of many, but this is one I've used before, and it comes up with some really good ideas. So this is one you definitely want to check out. Next one is you've got Scribbler. So on Scribbler, there's a function called Create Draft Outline. So what you do on Scribbler is you'd go into the interface, and it would say, let's create your custom outline. So basically, you're just creating an outline of an idea of your book. And again, all these suggestions with AI is giving you, you can take them or leave them. You can use them. You can redo them. You can use parts of them. It's a great tool to help you get your ideas together. So on Scribbler, you would go into the custom outline. You would put whether it's fiction or nonfiction. You put a title, and that's optional because you can always change that later. And then you would put a description of what you want your book to do, and what you outline, kind of a basic outline of what you want the AI to generate. Then what it will do is it will provide you an outline, and it gives you, like here, this particular one was Tinley to Shrew. It's just a small little children's book that I was working on. And it will break down various chapters. And this is where you can go, and when you start writing, you go into each one of these chapters, and it kind of gives you a starting point. And again, this is something you can change, modify, do whatever you want to with it. So then, once we have an outline, so you've gotten the AI suggestions for outline, you've taken it, you've adjusted it to the way you want it. So now it's time to let's start developing the characters. So character development is very important. So there's a couple of tools that you can use. One is again, you go back to perchance.org. They've got another function on there called AI Character Description Generator. And what you would do is in the little box up top here, you would kind of describe your character. And then you have the options of doing a short description, a long description, or a medium description. And it will generate a whole background and a visual description of the character for you. Now you'll take this information, and of course, you've already got in your head kind of what you want your characters to look like and act like. So you would take this and you would tweak it. This kind of helps you, pull that information together. And it's also got another neat little feature where it'll generate, some pictures of you of what the character may look like. And also it will give you illustration styles. So right down here, this is set on anime. So it kind of gives you that anime style illustration, but there's several other styles that you can use. The other one, we go back to Scribbler. Now in Scribbler, it's a big part of the program where you have elements. So these elements include characters, they include settings, they include objects. So at each one of these, the more description you put in them, the more the program has to draw off of when it is helping you come up with ideas. Now, what's neat between the two programs I've just shown you is that you can go back to the AI character description generator on Perchance, and this can help you really kind of develop your character and give lots of full information, give a lot of good background and characteristics and attitude and just way to the characters act, all sorts of different characteristics. And you can utilize that when you go onto Scribbler and you create your characters or your settings or your objects. And that's a great way to really build strong elements for your book. So then the next thing we want to do is now we want to go and get started. All right, so now we've got an outline that the AI has kind of helped us pull together. And we've got our characters, and of course you can always add more characters or tweak them as you go. But now we got a good base for our characters. So now we're going to start writing. So one way to get started is I'll utilize Microsoft Word, the dictation function. So on the main title, you would go to dictation, and all you do is you click dictation and you will speak into the computer and it'll type out what you want. Another function it has as well, and it has transcribe. So what that is, if you record yourself, which I do all the time, I've got ideas, I'll record myself, and you can take that and you can download it into Word, and it will print it out into text that you can then utilize and as ideas and modify and start building on it. That's a great way to do it. You also have back in Scribbler. So in Scribbler, once you got your beginning, let's say you start with a chapter and you got your beginning, so you got the first few paragraphs. So you go into Scribbler, and this allows you to go to Smart Writer. You'd go to AI Task as Write. You'd go to Guided. That allows you to give it more direction on how you want it to write. So the first prompt you would see is what you want the next scene to be. So this is where you describe what the next scene is going to be. So you type that in there, and then the next one are your elements. So remember how we've already developed our characters and our settings and our objects, which are all elements. You would drop in whichever elements are going to be in this particular scene. You would put them in this dialog box here, and the program is going to pull off all that information you've put in there. It's going to be able to draw off that information to develop this next scene for you. Then you want to go to creativity level. So if you're writing a fiction, like a little children's book, you'd really want to be as creative as it can be. But if you're doing like a tutorial or something like that, you don't want it to be creative. You want it to be very direct. So that's where you would adjust the creativity level. Then you've got tone, which is kind of how the wording comes together. So you can do here show an objective. You can do with humor, and there's several other options that you can choose to help it define how it's going to write. And then on the narrative perspective, I always use Observer. There's several others, like this is shown in first person, but there's several other narrative perspectives that you can use. So then once you have all that, you hit write, and it's going to generate several paragraphs for you. It's going to give you two options. And that way you can take a look at what you like and what you don't like, use what you want to use, throw it away and start over. You can do whatever you want to do with it. And that's how you kind of get yourself started. So now once you started building up and building your story, so let's say we've got some areas that we want to tweak. We don't really like the way it's coming together, and you're kind of stuck on how you want it, how you want it to be adjusted. We can go to, there's a program called Grammarly. And what this will do let's say you're in Word, and Grammarly will work in pretty much all your programs. But let's say we're in Word and we have taken some of our paragraphs and we're trying to figure out how to rewrite it and reword it. So Grammarly will give you all sorts of options. So you would highlight what you want to modify. You would hit Grammarly, and it gives you a whole slew of different options: improve it, shorten it, clean it up, and so forth. And this is a free program. You can download it. It's Grammarly. It's a free AI writing assist. And that's exactly what it does. It assists you in tweaking what you're writing. So another way is back in Scribbler. So you can take what you're writing. Let's say we want to redo a paragraph. So we would highlight this paragraph. We would go up to AI task. We would hit rewrite. And in this case, let's just say we want to rephrase it. So you'd hit rephrase, and down on the bottom, you would hit go. And it's going to give you 2 options. And again, this is ones that you can use. You can throw it away. You can take some of it and redo it. You do whatever you want to with it. It's just completely up to you. So this is a great way that you can take what you're writing, and if you get kind of stuck in a certain area, or you want kind of a second opinion or a different perspective on how to adjust something, these are 2 really cool ways to help you do that. So in a nutshell, so first thing you want to do is you want to consider self-publishing. It's a great way to go. And then you want to think about, what service you want to go with. And I've given you a list of several, and depending on what you want to do, one may work better than the other. Then you're going to develop your story flow. That's like the broad picture. That's the big picture. Then you want to develop your storyline. You're kind of starting to get it closer in and closer in, kind of developing your storyline. And then when you want to develop your characters. And that's when you really start kind of getting into the nuts and bolts of your story. And again, you can create new characters as you go along, or adjust them, or whatever you want to do. And then you want to get started. So you can start off by either typing it yourself, or you've got the dictation function in Word that works great, or you can handwrite it if you like. All sorts of different ways. And then you're going to start writing. And this is where, with AI and Scribbler, it can help you start writing out your story. And it can give you, fresh ideas, a different perspective, and you can take them, leave it, whatever you want to do. And then once you start getting kind of a body, a good amount of your story together, you can start adjusting it and tweaking it. And again, this is like if you get stuck on a paragraph, you want to rewrite it, you're not quite sure what you want to do. It's basically like talking to somebody. What do you think of this, that, and the other? So this program will work with you on that. So this is where we are up to this point. I hope you have found this helpful and interesting. So what we're going to start doing is, we're on our next episodes, we're going to start looking at formatting our pages. So with everything I've shown you here, you can put together a finished manuscript. So what we're going to do is we're going to start taking a look at, in upcoming episodes, as when we have our finished manuscript, on how we want to start structuring it and laying it out. Maybe we want to add some illustrations, we want to add some little details here and there, and of course we need to make sure all the margins and everything are correct, so that when you do upload it and you go to publishing, everything fits. So I hope you have found this interesting. I certainly have, and I hope you have enjoyed this show. And as always, I love your company. And until next time, remember, you always keep drawing, you always keep reading, and you always keep writing. And I will see you on the next episode of The Artist and the Author. Have a great evening.